In this video, we're going to talk about the cloak buttons setup. Okay, so this is our current version. I have a version 3 of the cloak that I've simmed. So version 3 is one of my iterations. I'm going to have a version 4 running in the background here too. This one looks a little better. So we're going to use this as our test bed for now. We haven't combined them in, so if we take a look at our overall graph here, this is the combine area. I have not yet added the cloak to that. I want to make sure everything else is working before I do. What I'd like to do is, in my files, I like to keep the results beneath the sections that were used to sim them. So I'm going to create my nodes right down here. And the first thing I'll do is I'll probably make an out for this. So these are just the buttons, so I'll just create a null here. Okay, so the geometry buttons are coming out there, and I'll create an output here. Just create a null and put it on the output of the Velum.io cloak. We'll call it temp cloak sim out. For now, we're just going to use this temp cloak sim out, but eventually we will use the final shape-fixed version of the cloak as our source for this. But for the time being, we'll just use what's coming out of this sim for now. Let's scroll down a little ways and we'll build our node graph down here, and then we'll nudge it down later. So let's start by adding some object merges to pull in the geometry that we want so that we don't have to have these long wires reaching all the way across the screen. Alright, if we scroll to the top here, we can find the geom cloak buttons and then alt drag that over, create a copy, and then we'll go with the temp cloak sim out. So we are going to need a time shift. These are animated buttons right now, and we don't want to be point deforming anything that's animated. So we're going to do a time shift for the first frame. Okay, 960 is the start, so we'll do F start, and that'll be good. Then we'll alt drag to duplicate that. So now we have time shifted to the start frame for both of these objects. Next, let's go ahead and throw down a point deform node. Okay, in the first input, we'll have our rest state buttons. Then we'll have our rest state cloak. And then in the third input, we'll have our moving cloak. All right, let's take a look at this. We would see that the buttons are moving. Let's add a merge here just for visualization, just so we can see the actual cloak and the buttons. So here's the buttons and the cloak. Okay. One thing I'm seeing here is that we have one of our buttons are on the back side here because we had done a shape fix here to fix the penetration with the sword, but that's easily fixed. If we just scroll up and get a copy of that soft transform control, okay, we'll just drop that in line here in the rest side, in the middle one, and on this one all we have to do is reverse the values that we have here. So just minus, and then you can see the rest state is back where it was, and so it sees the incoming as deform and it'll move the button where it needs to be. Okay, let's go ahead and create a group node so that we can start designating the triangles directly under each button. Put it in the moving channel of the point deform. Here, first let's call it something useful. Okay, let's call it cloak buttons underscore tries keep. So we'll pick that. So we'll just start walking through all of these buttons. I'll go ahead and pause the vid cap here and come back after I've got all these triangles selected. Okay, so I finished picking a triangle near each button, directly underneath each button, including the one on the shape fix that we just did, so it'll be on the back side here. One thing we need to do is we need to duplicate this now, so I'll just alt drag this over here so we have the same group in this node right here, and we're going to do the same blast on each one here. So I'll just drag this down and do a blast. Blast. Okay, plop it in there, and then we'll pick the group that we did here, and then we'll delete non-selected. Once we've got that, we'll alt drag it to the other side so we have a copy in the rest channel. See what we get here. We should just see these buttons, and let's see what we got. There we are. There should be one per. So let's go ahead and see what we get translated wise here. Oh, I see I have a few extra triangles here. So let's just see what it looks like non-wireframe. If we go forward a few frames here, let's just see how it goes. And it looks pretty good. The buttons aren't malformed. It's single triangle a piece, and that's what the default settings here. So I might 0.01. They keep their shape a little bit better if they're nice and small. So I would adjust this setting on the point deform if I need to. And other than that, I think this will work for now. Let's take a look at some deformation further along the timeline and see what we got there. This looks pretty good. Once we get our combined cloak results, we'll go ahead and swap the input from the sim mesh to the final shape deform mesh if we have to smooth it or maybe put a post process on there. In the next video, we're going to start with one of our simpler meshes, the pants, and we're going to point deform that back to the renderable mesh.